But we're going to move from sinners to the next point in the podcast, talking about severance, work,
Mhm.
memory, and the manufactured self. And I really did want to talk about Severance because I think that when the show first came out, many people didn't know what the show was about. And many
Mhm.
people hadn't really watched the show yet. So by the time season two came, everybody like caught up on season one and then watched season two. So we're not really going to give a full review over Severance. I do want to talk about like the innie and outie dynamic about Severance
Mhm.
because people have a lot of thoughts. They have a lot of like theories and questions, like what are they doing on Severance floor, like what is their job there at Lumen. And
Mhm.
for like my opinion in Severance, when I was doing my research, it's clear that the innie and outie, they're something of like manufactured doppelgangers. And, you know,
Mhm.
they're created by the medical procedure that splits a person's consciousness and memories based on their location, you know, work versus the outside world. And these two halves are literally severed from each other, with the innie existing solely in the workplace without any memory of their outside life, and then this work life split that is literal creates a second self, you know, a work double for Lumen, and then the outie is the one who's on the outside and is experiencing, you know, personal pain, trauma, and it is the most extreme form of compartmentalization ever. And as someone who's worked in the corporate life and who has had a 9 to 5 many years of my life, I have to say this is like it's such a sci-fi look into like, you know, work-life balance
Mhm.
and you know the culture of being a laborer, the culture of being a 9 to 5er. And I
Mhm.
found the show to be incredible, honestly very well done. And I feel like the innie outie dynamic in the show, it's it's actually, I feel like it's so revolutionary and so amazing that it feels obvious. You
Mhm.
know, there are times where I'm watching something and someone brings up an idea or a concept in, you know, the media I'm consuming, and I'm like, that is actually so amazing and yet so relatable. And it's crazy that this is the first time it's been introduced to me. You
Mm.
know, did you feel that way when you were watching Severance?
I did. So I was one of the people that watched Severance when it first came out, which was like 3 years ago, right? It was like 2022.
Yeah.
And I remember it quite vividly. I put it on literally just on Apple TV and I was like, oh, okay. And my brother, I was watching it with my brother and he was like, oh, this is so boring. Like, first episode. We finished the entire season in one night and we were like, that's the best piece of television we've ever seen in our life.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. It's such an obvious thing that I'm like, how did nobody present this to us? And I think it's done in a way that's so subtle and it isn't super in your face and like, trying to bask in this idea that, we thought of this really revolutionary thing.
Mm-hmm.
But even in the way that it's styled, it feels so simple, but there's so much to digest there. And I think it's genuinely one of the best shows that I think has ever existed. It's so well done and it's so well written and it's so revolutionary that it's like, why did nobody think of this before?
Yeah. And I do think that with Lumen as like the corporation, the fact that they
Yes.
utilize like the double to
Mhm.
create the perfect worker, so to speak, like someone who is not marred by their own personal pain and not checking their phone, you know, calling up family members, like their only focus is their job. Their only
Mhm.
focus is their work. And so it's
Mhm.
easy to entice them with like, you know, little gifts at work, small incentives to have them working hard, to have them focus on what they're supposed to be doing, and to keep all the floors and all the different departments separate from each other so that people only congregate with the people that they work with. That way, they're less likely to socialize or less likely to want to fraternize with, you know, other departments. And
Mhm.
also having people focus on their work and not even like remember outside conversations means that they can't talk to people about how much they get made. They can't talk to
Mhm.
people about what they do at work or how their boss treats them. They don't have any ideas of asking for any accommodations at work. They're just simply happy and they feel even lucky enough to be
Mhm.
able to go to work. And the person who is on the outside, they are seeking out this procedure, obviously, because the life they live on the outside is not one that they want to remember. They're
Mm,
looking for that separation. They're looking for, that kind of space in their memory. That is something that they're seeking on purpose. And seeing how Lumen kind of like weaponizes the procedure for certain people,
mhm,
it's very interesting. And there are a lot of theories online as to like how certain people started working at Lumen,
mhm.
which I kind of take with like a grain of salt, because I feel like Ben Stiller has done such a phenomenal job in making the show, and I think that there's like so much more that's going to be revealed to us as we
Mhm.
continue on with the season and everything like that. So I did want to ask you, what is your opinion on the innies? Like, do you feel like they're monsters or do you feel like they're victims? Because a lot of people on Reddit or online, they have so many discussions about if the innies are, good or bad.
That's very interesting. I haven't actually read anything about them being bad. Can I ask why people think they're bad before I make up my mind?
Yeah. So I think that with the innies, I'm not sure if people really see them as monsters, so to speak, but I think that people view the innies as not even human. I think
Hmm.
that people look at the innies like they're copies. You
Hmm.
know, in the same theory, following in the theory of like the doppelganger, where it's like the manufactured self, it's like the, curated version of yourself. People
Hmm.
look at innies like it is simply a persona, like
Hmm.
it's just an act. Like when people are watching the show, they see innie Mark as a separation from outie Mark. Like outie Mark is Mark. That's
Hmm.
real Mark. And innie
Okay.
Mark is just like, he's an imposter, so to speak. He's just a placeholder. So I think a lot of people, when they were looking at like Helly and Mark's connection with one another, they're just looking at it as like, oh, it's just like a band aid, but it's not something that's real. Like people
Hmm.
didn't look at it with something that was like actually worth pursuing, because they only know each other when they're at work. And
Hmm.
the person that Mark is at work isn't an actual person. That's just like a copy of himself. You know what
Hmm.
I mean?
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see them as being less than human or being copies of the real person. I think they are also the real person. I think what I find really interesting about Severance, speaking to how like very obvious it is it takes something that I believe we are already doing and makes it into this very sci-fi concept. And so that argument to me sounds like saying, are you yourself when you go to work and you're code switching? I'm thinking of that Lakeith Stanfield film where he I'm sorry to bother you,
Oh,
where he
sorry to
like
bother
puts
you.
on, yeah,
Yes.
where he like puts on a different voice every time he's at work, right? I think with Severance, it takes, the idea of code switching or changing your persona for work, and it makes it into this much bigger sci-fi thing. But those are the same person. I actually think the model that Lumen has maybe dehumanizes the innies so much that maybe viewers are starting to dehumanize the innies as well. Because it is dehumanizing to say, you can't speak to other people from other departments. You can't do anything. Your only purpose here is to work. But I think what's probably more sinister about it is they're not using robots. They're using real humans and
Mm-hmm.
just stripping away their humanity
Mm-hmm.
so that they can do the work. And that's something that has really been plaguing me because I think of it in terms of capitalism, for example. And if we think of like AI and the growth of AI, I sincerely believe that capitalism loves the human slave. Let's
Mm-hmm.
put it that way. The human slave that is stripped of their humanity through labor, as opposed to the artificial slave. And so with any mark, with any of the innies, except for Helly, with any of the innies, I do believe that they are the victim in this situation. I understand that people can look at them and think, well, this isn't the real thing, but I think it is the real thing. I think they are being victimized to what I perceive as slavery. It is essentially slavery because they have no understanding of why they're there. They had seemingly no choice in being there. Although I suppose they do have a choice because their other counterpart chose for them to be here. But anyway, I see them as the victim. I see them as only the victim. I see them as being constantly dehumanized within this space. And I think at the end of season 1, where they staged that escape, it seemed to me to kind of represent that they were being victimized in this space and that they did want more from life. Seemingly, if we think of the idea of the innie and the outie, it seems like the outie would have the better life, which is not necessarily the case in Severance, obviously. But in both instances, the innie is the one that is, it seems, more unaware of the situation. So the bigger victim.
Yeah, I think that the innies are living like half lives, so to
Yeah.
speak. And it's clear in season 2 how Lumen is trying to remedy the whole like escape in season 1 with trying to make the innies feel more whole, but that is very difficult to do if the entire workplace structure you've built around the innies is essentially the fact that they're a new form of consciousness. And the only reason why they are created is to be exploited.
Yeah.
So to try and like draw back on the exploitation is hard. And I think that's what's so funny to me with like gosh, what's his name? I was gonna say Mushnik, but that's from
Oh, Milchick.
Milchick. Okay, it's Milchick,
Or
right?
Milchick. I
Milchick.
don't know.
Yeah. So Mr. Milchick, I think that's why he does like the dance party for
Yeah.
Helly when she first comes, or like why he brings in the marching band when Mark finally finishes Cold Harbor. It's like this is the most insane, ridiculous thing, but like they exist in such a cold environment that is so stripped from any kind of humanity that when they complete something at work, you need to fill them with such life and allow them to feel any kind of joy so that they never complain, but they are always working and striving for the next thing. That's why, you know, Dylan's waffle party was so weird and strangely sexual because it's like, hey, let's feed this weird part of his brain. That way he can like see if that gets like a little spark in his mind. Like if that scratches an itch, you know, if that's something he's into, you know, like it's kind of like why would anybody like this? But then again, I think that the waffle party was like created by one of the Lumen creators and like rich people are kind of weird. They're into strange things. So when the women were coming out with the masks, I was like, ooh, this is a little strange. I would have left that waffle party too, if I'm being honest. I'm not watching that. I'm actually going back to work. I'm good, guys. You can keep that. I don't want that anymore. But I think that with the innies, I at some points was like I did feel bad for them at certain points because they really are just, you know, existing as, you know, like you said, human slaves. And I feel like, in my opinion, I don't know if there are maybe experts that disagree with me. I think this is why AI can never really replace humankind because even though people like things that are fast and easy and, you know, AI is something that's very quick, AI makes mistakes all the time. Like any kind of AI model that you create, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's Grok, whether it's Bing AI, it doesn't matter. It's not without mistakes because AI is created by humans and humans make mistakes. And in the way that these models are created and the energy that it's used, it is ridiculous to think that AI will outlast humans because just off the energy sources alone that ChatGPT uses with all the water it uses, like very unlikely that it'll continue going. And with AI being used in like art, like I just saw an article the other day that apparently Natasha Lyonne will be creating an AI film or she will be directing an AI film. Yeah. So I feel bad for how many times I watched Russian Doll because that is disappointing to hear. But, you know, humans don't always want something made by robots. Like, are there humans that, you know, follow AI meme pages and watch AI videos and listen to AI podcasts?
AI meme pages?
Huh?
There are AI pages?
Yeah.
That's a thing?
There are AI podcasts too.
Oh my God.
Yes. Yes. The other day, somebody offered me like a whole deal to have an AI co host on my podcast. Yes.
No.
I would be talking to an AI robot. And they were like, "Oh, this is a paid deal," and I was like, "You could keep your money. That's not happening. You could keep that money because I will get pissed off immediately. Immediately, I need a person to talk to." But the thing with AI is that like it's not a human person. Human beings
Yeah.
have lived experiences and memories. People
Mm-hmm.
want to experience human connection. You cannot replace everything with robots because they're cold and they are unfeeling, and
Mm-hmm.
people want, some kind of community with other humans. Like, even though people don't get along sometimes, that doesn't mean that they want to do away with humans. And corporations are of the mindset that they want their work done quickly, they want their work done well, and they want it done by the most like the biggest number of people that they can so that things can be done as fast as they can. But
Mm-hmm.
what they fail to realize is that eventually, like, these models will fail because of the way they're created. And that is perfectly represented in Severance, because these innies are meant to be the perfect little laborers, the perfect
Mm-hmm.
little workers that do as they're told. But even the people that are like babysitting the innie, so to speak, like Patricia Arlett's character, like her job wasn't safe. They were so quick to give her the boot. And then Milchick was put in her place, and he was immediately scrutinized because these
Mm-hmm.
corporations, they expect perfection. And they will do whatever it is they can to achieve that perfection. And they believe that separating humans from the nasty and messy bits of their selves would have made them the perfect workers. And that wasn't enough because you're still dealing with human
With you.
beings.
Yeah.